Hey folks, welcome back. Time for another almost entry in the Cheap and Cheerful series. I'm saying almost because the two puzzles I'm going to show you today are actually a little bit above the arbitrary price limitation I set of £10 or less. These puzzles are the Dayan F-Skewb and Master F-Skewb, two really interesting Skewb type corner turning puzzles. However, both of these are about $16 or so on Z-Cube, so a little bit above the price limit. But still pretty reasonable, I would say. There's an awful lot of mass-produced puzzles that are a heck of a lot more expensive, but these are pretty good value for the money in terms of the interest of the solve. I'm pretty early in getting acquainted with these puzzles, so I'm just going to give you a very brief intro and kind of give you a comparison to the previous corner-turning Skewbs that I've shown recently, the F-Skewb and the Land Master Skewb. Okay, so we'll start with the F-Skewb, and you can see right away that this has quite a unique pattern of pieces on the faces. Doesn't look like your typical Skewb. So we've got these edges bunched up toward the corner here. We've got two big chunky centers, two corners, and then two more edges. It's quite an unusual configuration, and that's echoed across all the faces, as you can see. And the reason that it has that unusual pattern is that it doesn't turn like a conventional Skewb. So if we look at the Land Master Skewb, on any given axis, I have the identical Skewb turns available, and I have on the Master Skewb this slice layer as well, right? But on the F-Skewb, I have these dino turns, right? And on the other side of that same axis, I have a Skewb turn and a slice turn. So that's why we don't have corners on all points of each face. We only have two corners, right? Because where we have those dino cuts, we have corners. And where we have the Skewb cuts, we don't. We have corners around where those Skewb cuts turn, but not at the origin of that turn, if that makes sense. So that means we have an asymmetry to this puzzle, right? Each axis has two different kinds of turns available. On one end, we have our dino cuts. On the other end, we have our Skewb cuts, and then a slice in the middle as well. So that makes this puzzle actually a quite different experience from something like the F-Skewb or the Master Skewb, which are fully symmetric, right? Every axis on this puzzle turns the same. We don't have that weirdness that we have here on the F-Skewb. And of course, the same is true of the F-Skewb, right? Every corner turns the same. So that alone is what really sets apart the F-Skewb and makes the solve experience quite different. So if that is something that appeals to you, that really is going to be the determiner of whether you need to add this puzzle to your collection, basically. I think if you're a fan of Skewbs and you want to have a little bit of a different solving experience, then this is a good one to get. As a puzzle, the quality is actually okay. I wouldn't say it's incredible. The main issue that I have with both of these puzzles, in fact, is that the plastic feels quite cheap and thin. As you can see, it turns actually pretty well. I can't complain too much on that. But there is a lot of catchiness, and when you scramble it and things start to get mixed up, I do tend to notice a lot of catchiness. And part of that is the way that the pieces themselves are constructed. It might be difficult to see here, but you can see that these centerpieces, for example, the way that they're fit together, you end up with this little bit of plastic sticking out. So there's the bottom part of the centerpieces kind of curls around and meets up in the middle of that piece, and that gives tons of opportunities for things to catch when you're moving the puzzle. In general, it's not super frustrating, but it does kind of slow your pace a little bit, and it can be a bit annoying when you're trying to get through a sequence. So because of that and the cheap feeling plastic, and also Dayan's insistence on this really sickly yellow shade over here, they're not my favorite puzzles in terms of the aesthetics and the mechanics, but the actual turning is pretty good. So functionally, they're okay. But given that they are a little bit more expensive than something like the Master Skewb, I can freely recommend the F-Skewb or the Master Skewb for basically anyone, because for the price, they're pretty good puzzles, and they're just a blast to solve. This one, though, is a bit on the borderline. I would say, for $16, you need to be able to get past the aesthetics and the slight flaws in the design. You can be secure that it will turn okay once you get it in your hands. But I think really it should be a type of puzzle that you're intrigued by to really take that leap, you know. And it in some respects, I think this puzzle is a little bit easier than the sort of roughly equivalent regular Skewbs, simply because, you know, for example, if I turn these two dino corners, they have no impact on each other. And so there's some pieces on the puzzle that you can place without sort of too much interference. The Skewb turns, however, do make things interesting enough that I find it an intriguing solve. And it does kind of throw you off your game a little bit to have these two different kinds of turns in the same puzzle. You end up with some rather intriguing configurations, and things that would work on a normal Skewb will not necessarily work on this puzzle. So you have to come up with a unique solution. So for me, it's a great addition to the collection because I do like Skewbs a lot. In particular, the Rex Cube and the Master Skewb really converted me to this category of puzzles. So it was a no-brainer for me to want to add these to my collection eventually, once I realized that they were different. But yeah, just, you know, take a look. Think to yourself whether you don't mind paying perhaps a little bit over the odds to get that intriguing solve experience, and then go from there. Now that's the regular F-Skewb. And here we have the Master F-Skewb, which is also from Dayan, of course. And as you can see, we've taken a step up in terms of the order of the puzzle. And what's deceptive about this thing is that really, if I put it side by side with the Lan Master Skewb, it looks exactly the same, right? I mean, it's stickerless, but other than that, we seem to have all the same pieces in all the same places and all the same cuts, right? But in actual fact, we have an upsized version of the F-Skewb rather than a true Master Skewb. So once again, we have Skewb cuts on one side of this axis. Then we have a big slice here. The slice turns actually 2 layers, which cannot be turned separately. And we have these dino cuts on the other end. So again, we have an asymmetry on each axis of the puzzle. The other thing that's fun is we have trivial tips. Look at that. So at the end of our Skewb cuts here, we have little trivial tips. Utterly pointless, but always fun to have, much like when you have them on a Pyraminx. So again, this puzzle is a really different experience from the regular Master Skewb, and it's just a shame that they don't officially call it something quite different. You know, the puzzle does have a unique identity compared to the Master Skewb from Lan, and I feel like they should really harp on that and make clear that it's a different puzzle. They probably lose some sales to Lan because people think, oh, I'll just get the Master Skewb that's $5 cheaper. Why not? But this puzzle's really interesting, and I think it really deserves to be in more people's collections. I actually found it quite a challenge because I had to break myself out of my Master Skewb thinking in a much more direct way, because the puzzle confronts you with a visual that looks identical, but in actual fact, you really have to deal with a very different situation on the puzzle. I had to come up with new sequences. You know, everything I would normally want to do was a little bit changed. You know, I've suddenly got dino cuts, I've got this asymmetry, I've got now this big slice layer instead of a single slice layer, and it changes things up nicely. Also, I would say that this puzzle, in my experience so far at least, turns significantly nicer than the lower order F-Skewb. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but the feel of it is just more compact, more stable. The plastic still feels a bit chintzy, and, you know, I'm still not a fan of the shades, and the trivial tips perhaps turn a bit too easily, but that's not a huge problem. But each turn feels really nice. It clicks into place solidly, but there's not too much friction. Every turn feels pretty effortless. And the only complaint really is that because of the nature of the puzzle, it's very easy to not be sure what turns you have available on a given situation until you actually just try it. I haven't found it too easy to just pick out visually what turns I might have available on a given axis. But I think, you know, the more I solve it, the more I'll become accustomed to that. So, in my opinion, if you were thinking to maybe sample one of the F-Skewbs, I would get the master version. You know, it feels a little bit more worth the price because you've got these additional pieces. It does have this kind of weird, very different solve from the regular Master Skewb, but it looks identical, so it kind of messes with your head a little bit. And the turning quality is nicer. So to me, if you're going to spend $16 on one of these puzzles to sample this little series, then definitely get the Master version. I think that'd be the way to go. The only catchiness I have with this is a little bit on these dino corners, but it's been getting better slowly as I solve the puzzle more. And again, it really isn't enough for me to be driven away from the puzzle, shall we say. Yeah, so there are some tutorials out there for this if you get stuck, but I think a big part of the fun for me with this puzzle is, trying to figure it out when I solve a lot of Skewb and Master Skewb and Rex Skewb, and then I have to confront this weirdness over here with these big Skewb turns and tiny dino turns, and it's all strange. And I always end up trying to do Master Skewb stuff and then being surprised by the outcome and having to remind myself what I'm doing. And that's a nice little novelty element to have it in my Skewb collection. So I hope that clarified things for you. I just wanted to make sure that when I profiled the Master Skewb and the Rex Skewb that I could really make it abundantly clear that there are these alternate Skewbs. The F-Skewb is fine because it doesn't look like any other Skewb with these two big chunky centers and the odd placement of the edge pieces. But this one, it really looks identical to the Master Skewb. But because they are quite different in the solve experience, I think it's worth having both if you do already have a Land Master Skewb. So that's a quick look at the two Dayan F-Skewbs. These were presents for me under the Christmas tree that I requested and were very generously picked up for me. So I'm really excited to have these now. Really been enjoying solving these. In particular, as I said, this one, it just feels nice in the hands, and I really enjoy manipulating it and scrambling it and solving it. So I can give these a pretty good recommendation. Like I said, because the prices are a bit higher, I'm tagging this as almost cheap and cheerful. And given that we're in scary times and people have tight budgets, just think through whether it's the right puzzle for you. Hopefully I've given you enough information to help you decide that. If you think that you'd like a new quirky element in your Skewb collection, then give them a try. If you do give them a try, or if you already have them, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I have worked out solutions for these. There are some tutorial videos out there, but if you found some interesting strategies, or even better, if you found other puzzles that are somehow related to these that I might try, I'd be interested in finding out about those as well. So yeah, that's my little look at the F-Skewbs. And in the meantime, until the next video, I hope you guys take care and you're enjoying the beginning of 2021. I'll be back soon with some more cheap and cheerful puzzles, maybe a couple of solved videos here and there that I've got in the works, so I hope you look forward to those. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.